Welcome to the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. It is a fantastic weekend in the sports world. You got the NBA Finals, you got the Boston Celtics, the Golden State Warriors, an epic Game 1 that we had in the 2022 NBA Finals. You had the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals. You're seeing arguably the four best teams in hockey today competing for Lord Stanley Cup. You're seeing all the news going on in the NFL, the retirements of Frank Gore and Ryan Fitzpatrick, two long stalwarts of the NFL, and officially retiring, trying to get into Canton in a couple of years. And then you got Major League Baseball, the long grind of MLB. They're past the quarter point in the MLB season. And to talk about all the biggest topics in the sports world here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I have brought on a special guest today, somebody I've brought on to the Sports Angle in the past, and someone I consider a good friend of mine. Our Phineas Renegade, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm just glad to join you. Finally, once again on the Sports Angle, the PR Connections Radio. Thanks a lot, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, when it comes to the NFL, I mean, I understand that June and July are normally the slow months with the NFL, but on my team's in the NFC North, your team is in the NFC North, and your team made a lot of moves this offseason, a lot of moves in the right direction, I might add, and that is the Detroit Lions. Now, it is too early to make preseason predictions, but I will say with Detroit, Brad Holmes, the general manager, I think he did an excellent job ever since he's been brought in. Dan Campbell, he's energetic. He's a guy who's really passionate about the game. One of the best head coaches that's really been brought in the last couple of years. So I want to ask you, as somebody who really understands the Detroit Lions, when it comes to Detroit, do you think that they have a really good shot at making the playoffs, if it's not this year, but next year, considering everything they've done?
Definitely next year. I think Jared Goff right now is really on the hot seat with the Lions right now. He's really got to perform. He looked great in Los Angeles. He looked great with the Rams. However, right now it's too early to tell. Last year, his first year with the Lions, with a rookie head coach. Now, the one thing I will say that they did, and the big buzz around camp, ever since Dan Campbell has gotten there, which is the head coach of the Lions, is the fact that he's really changed the culture of the Detroit Lions as far as personnel not wanting to be there. These players do want to be there, and these players do want to play for him. I understand something. Last year, they were young. They're a very young team. And right now, with a young head coach, they're really going to go through some growing pains. And I think last year is one of them. And for me, a successful season for them would be 7 games. They win 7 games. I would say that they had a pretty successful season and is headed in the right direction. Now, granted, that's my team. It's been my team since 1986. All right. So with that being said, they are they're a bit of ways away, but not as far off as we think. This year, if they make the playoffs, that'd be great. But I don't see it this year. Next year, I do. They've got probably one of the top 5 offensive lines in the league. There's that. And we all know that the Detroit Lions never had an offensive line. And if that's the one thing I can give credit to former GM Bob Quinn, is that he, it takes time for them to develop that offensive line. But now that they did, this may can start a trend in the organization.
And as we're talking about the Detroit Lions here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with our Phineas Frazier, the Renegade from No Filter Productions. And when it comes to Detroit, I actually am going to disagree. I actually think that this team is a sleeper pick for the 2022 NFL playoffs. And I have two reasons as to why. The first reason is because of how weakened the NFC has become this offseason. Green Bay has gotten weaker. You've had teams like Seattle, who's gotten a heck of a lot weaker. You have teams like, for example, the Arizona Cardinals, who are pretty much self-destructing with all the moves of Kyler Murray and all the crap they've been doing this offseason. You got to understand the NFC South, New Orleans, they pretty much have tried to double down the defense while stripping away certain parts of the offense. Carolina is trying to double down on Sam Darnold. I don't know if that's a good idea. The Atlanta Falcons, they might be in the Bryce Young sweepstakes. They might be trying to tank for the 2023 season with Bryce Young being the top pick. So because of the fact that so many NFC teams are either gotten weakened or are outright going to be sucking in the 2022 NFL season, it leads me to believe that there's going to be two teams that are going to take advantage of that. I believe the Detroit Lions are going to take advantage. I also believe the Minnesota Vikings are going to take advantage of it. Because really, for the first time in a long time, the Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, and heck, Chicago Bears, they have a possibility of going after Green Bay because Green Bay is not the powerhouse they've been for really the last decade with all the stuff they've lost this offseason. So I say that's the first reason why Detroit can make the playoffs because of how weakened the NFC has become. Second is that the Detroit Lions schedule, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's actually not a bad schedule. I mean, the team
I've seen that.
Yeah, absolutely, for the first time in a long time. When it comes to Detroit Lions, because of their schedule, I believe that's going to be an advantage for Detroit. I will say that there's certain teams that they could beat up on and get a W in 2022 where they couldn't have done it last year. So because of those two reasons, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, I would not be surprised if the 7th seed ended up being the Detroit Lions because of what's happened this offseason in the NFC.
Hey, you know what, though? And, I mean, you're right. Here's the deal with the Detroit Lions, and let's talk about ownership. So the Ford family is really starting to you're starting to see their name disappear, so to speak, from basically the Detroit Lions and the organization. And Night Train Lane, back in 1957, I believe that's the last time that Detroit won anything. It was back then. It was the NFL championship, a couple years before the Super Bowl. Night Train Lane said, as long as the Detroit Lions are owned by the Ford family, they will never win a championship. Well, here we are, 60 plus years later, they have not won. Who's owned them? The Ford family. And there was a lot of reports for a long time that they were somewhat illegally funneling money from the Detroit Lions to Ford, which of course that breaks antitrust laws. You can't do that. To say that's a big no-no. So they were pretty much forced to sell to someone outside of the Ford family, although Sheila Ford him. But it was basically done to remove the name. And now it's kind of being considered as the Fords no longer owning anything in the Detroit Lions, although Sheila is, well, a Ford at the end of the day. So when you have poorly ran organizations and mismanagement of everything, including funds, it creates the disaster that we call the Detroit Lions. Present day. And kudos to Dan Campbell, kudos to Brad Holmes, and to all their staff for being able to create an entirely different narrative, one that they haven't had since the Detroit Lions won the last time they won a division in 1991.
It has been a long time for the Detroit Lions. Let's go to the comments. Let's have your voice be heard here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. Is it picking a Detroit team risky like picking the Tigers this year? There's always going to be one person that's going to comment.
Oh,
about
she's
my
trying to be cute. That's not
well,
funny.
to
I'm
give
sorry.
people context,
Excuse me. And no, I'm highly insulted by that.
I'm going to say this.
Listen, you're a loyal person when you can state Detroit Lions were the first team I ever see. Well, the first team in the NFL history to go 0-16. They winless donut the whole time. And look, that year, 2008, I was over in Iraq. All right. And I just so happened to catch on AFN, that's the Armed Forces Network. I just so happened to catch Thanksgiving Day that year in Detroit Lions. And I'll never forget it because Kevin Smith fumbled the whole kickoff return. He fumbled. It was the first kickoff that happened, and I said, "Oh hell!" Next thing you know, they lost 62-10, and I've been a fan ever since.
That game.
So that's loyalty.
Now, to give people context for the people on the audio side who are not able to see the video side, so we had a comment from somebody saying, "Isn't picking a Detroit team like risky, like picking the Tigers this year?" That is a callback to my MLB predictions, where I said the Detroit Tigers were going to win the AL Central. And my only rebuttal is the fact that they have been injury-prone to absolute oblivion. They've also had a lot of young talent who are still trying to find their stride right now in Detroit. However, I'm going to say don't give up yet. Because outside of Minnesota, the rest of the division has been cratering like a landmine.
Hey, the Tigers just took a series against the Twins.
They just did.
There you go. That's one thing too, and also you got to remember we still got 140 plus games to go.
That is true. True.
It's a long season still. So I mean, and they're not. It's not like they're in last place right now because that belongs to the Kansas City Royals. But we still got a long way to go, and they're only 9 games out of first place. It could be a lot worse.
I definitely agree on that. And before we move over to the next segment here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Renegade from No Filter Productions. And with the Detroit Lions, there is one question I do have to ask you as somebody who is very loyal to Detroit. Now, this draft that happened recently, they get Aiden Hutchinson, who I proclaim was arguably the best player in the draft. They get Jamison Williams. They trade up to get Jamison Williams, who I honestly thought was the best wide receiver in this draft. And if he hadn't gotten injured in the college football championship, I don't actually think he would have been the first wide receiver taken. I said after the draft, and you can go back and watch the episode, I actually have it. I said that the Detroit Lions arguably had the best draft they've had in the last decade. Now, you think that's an accurate statement? That Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, the executives, the scouting department.
They did a heck of a job drafting. I mean, they did. They met a lot of immediate needs, and they got younger at some positions that they really needed to get younger at. What they did was they basically used free agency to just fill some holes. It wasn't about getting a big name player or anything like that, because let's not forget, they still owe Jared Goff all that money at the end of the day.
Well, speaking of Jared Goff, a lot of people have said that the reason why he didn't take quarterback this year was that they were going to take quarterback next year in the more deep quarterback class of 2023. You think that's correct?
Yep. Yeah, I think Jared Goff is there to let's face it, he's been in a few years now, and he's probably heading into one of the twilights of his career. But for him, my mentality would be now or never, because he knows that he's on the hot seat right now, and all eyes are going to be on him for at least the first 6 games. Because right now, if I'm Brad Holmes and I'm Dan Campbell, I'm not sure yet if I can go forward with this guy, if I want this guy around another 2-3 years. And not only that, a max deal is out of the question. I mean, unless he comes and does the unthinkable, and that's win a Super Bowl. Good luck with that.
Yeah, that would be something.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen, but it's highly unlikely.
Obviously the draft pick and where they were selected isn't the same, but I did tell someone a long time ago, I felt like Jared Goff is the modern era Matt Hasselbeck. Like, if you remember Matt Hasselbeck back in the day,
I
he was a
remember
guy
Matt
that you would bring
Hasselbeck.
in for a couple of years.
He was with the Seattle Seahawks for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, he was with Green Bay, with Seattle, Tennessee, Indianapolis. I mean, he was a good quarterback. But, he wasn't a top 10 guy, or he really was never top 10.
He was serviceable.
Serviceable. Yeah. I think that's what Jared Goff is.
I think that's a good word for him. Matt Hasselbeck was serviceable. And serviceability comes a long way in the NFL. I mean, let's face it, Matt Hasselbeck wasn't on any Super Bowl winning teams by far. But because he made a difference, and it was done kind of quietly. But I mean, I think he deserves a little more credit. Not much, but a little more. Because I mean, I've seen some terrible quarterbacks, and he wasn't really one of them. He was reliable, if anything. I mean, you knew you were going to get, you weren't going to get 300-yard games from him, but he was going to take care of the ball and manage the clock. And I think he did that. I think he did that pretty well. He wasn't a gunslinger, or he wasn't the most accurate passer, but he would take care of the ball, and he would give you a chance.
Now, speaking of quarterbacks, that's going to be a nice segue into what our next discussion is going to be. Now, every single season, every single time we get into the NFL, there's always this question about who's the best quarterback in the NFL for insert year. However, we're going to change it up here on the Sports Angle. This is what we do. We try to give you a different angle when it comes to the sports world. So instead of asking you, Renegade, asking the world who's the best quarterback in the NFL, instead, we're going to ask it like this. All right, Renegade, you have the first pick. You are a general manager. You can pick any quarterback in the NFL. The caveat is you have to have them be part of your franchise for the next decade. All right, the next 10 years, they got to be part of your organization. So you got that first pick. Who's your quarterback and why?
That's a good question. And they have present day quarterback, correct?
That would have to be present day, yes.
Okay. All right. Give me Trevor Lawrence. And here's why. Okay, because despite what this young man went through in Jacksonville, he still managed to win a couple of games. It's rookie year, and I think he's handling it all with great poise. Mm-hmm. Didn't get hurt, although I wouldn't blame him if he did. He didn't get hurt, and that's pretty hard for a rookie to do. And it just goes to show you the toughness that this kid has. Keep in mind, he can play the quarterback position. He's all right, and he's gonna be okay. I think they're another organization that needs a new direction, but I don't even think they've really formed any kind of mystique or identity about themselves since they came into the league.
Well, I mean, they had Saxonville for like a hot cup of coffee. But
right, yeah, and see that's what I mean. But every hot cup of coffee cools down.
Yeah, eventually.
And like Green Bay, for instance, Green Bay, they're gonna play you tough. And it's a hostile environment to go into every single season. And that's what I mean by creating somewhat of a franchise identity. I think that's what one thing Jacksonville is still trying to find. And they'll get there.
So as we are talking about the NFL here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, talking about which quarterback are you picking to lead your franchise for the next decade? You're a general manager of the NFL. You got your first overall pick. You can pick any quarterback in the NFL. The one caveat is you have to keep them on your team for a solid decade. Well, Renegade, I respect your answer. I respectfully disagree with Trevor Lawrence. To me, I think there's a quarterback who already has shown that he can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And the fact that I have to keep him for the next decade lines up perfectly with who I'm selecting, because he signed a 13-year deal worth $500 million not even 2 years ago. The quarterback I'm picking to lead my franchise for the next decade is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL today, and that is Patrick Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Of course it would be. Why wouldn't it be?
Now, look, I'm going to say this. Do I think that his contract is going to be an anchor for the Kansas City Chiefs the longer he's on there? Abso-freaking-lutely. But you can't deny the talent. You cannot deny that he is one of the most talented quarterbacks we have seen in the modern era. The way
but he's been losing steam. And I think a lot of that has to do with, well, when you make the playoffs every year since you've been in the league, I mean, you play more games than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of helps, and I think it's you can see the wear and tear and him actually being tired is starting to show.
Right, it's gonna happen.
And I think it's going to come out even more this year.
Well, this season he might not even make the playoffs. I mean, this is like the first time in the last 6 or 7 years that Kansas City might not even be a playoff team heading into 2022. Now, as we were talking about the quarterbacks, let's go over to the running back position real quick, because I do want to ask you, who is the best running back heading into the 2022 NFL season? Like, who's your RB1 in, if you had to go to fantasy football, if you're one of those guys who plays fantasy football, who do you think is the best running back in the league right now?
I'll pass because honestly, there's no one who's really impressed me at the running back position. I'm not even going to say Chris Johnson. And as talented as I think he is, I still kind of wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I will say that. However, the answer that I would give is that when it comes to the NFL, when it comes to the running back position, I've always believed that you need a guy who can run in between the tackles. You need somebody who's a big body, somebody who'd be willing to knock down 5 or 6 people like bowling pins and just keep going. And to me, that's Derrick Henry. There's a reason why they call him King Henry. I mean, he is a guy that is built like a wide receiver. He has speed like the wide receiver. He's built like an offensive lineman. I mean, he literally will just truck people and run 50 yards down the field. So I say that it is Derrick Henry.
He's just a modern day Marshawn Lynch.
Oh, absolutely. Beast mode. Beast Quake, as they used to call him. Yeah. So I definitely will say that. And as we've talked about the NFL here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media, we do have a question for you, Renegade. It's in the chat. Tell us again what you think of the Raiders doing 10 wins this year. Obviously, we are in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. So we do have a big Las Vegas fan base. So what do you think about the Raiders? What do you think about the season?
Well, the Raiders are a good team. I think last season was kind of a lesson learned, especially for Derek Carr. So I look to see him making the playoffs. 10 wins? Maybe. That's going to be a pretty tough division, especially with Russell Wilson coming in Denver. So, it might. I'm not going to tell you that I'm about 60-40. If that makes any sense. I like them. I don't like them to win the division. I'll say they'll get 9 wins. 9 would be safe to say for them. And they'll make the playoffs maybe at a 5 or 6 seed. Won't be the 7th, but they'll be 5 or 6.
And the person that's watching this show, obviously, I'm not the most popular person in Las Vegas because of what I'm about to say, but I always keep it honest here on this show. I am 50-50 on the Raiders in 2022. Best case scenario, it clicks together. Josh McDaniels, the Bill Belichick thing, it rushes off on them, and they end up winning 10 or 11 games. They're the 5th seed in the AFC. They have one of the best records in the NFL. I mean, honestly, that's the best case scenario. However, there is the worst case scenario that Josh McDaniels shows what he did in Denver, which was an absolute train wreck. There's a possibility that Josh McDaniels wasn't built to be an NFL-style coach it was more better as an assistant coach. I mean, Renegade, we've watched football long enough to know that there's certain people who are built to be head coaches, and there's certain people who are built to be assistants. It's just the way it is.
Well, in that show, I mean, let's go back to the Detroit Lions in the Matt Patricia era. He was built to be an assistant coach. We all knew that he was way in over his head. And, I often said to the Lions fans, look, the organization needs to go on ahead and they need to write Jim Caldwell an apology letter and pay him double his salary for him to come back on that, because that was a terrible decision.
Horrible move. Horrible.
Right. And everybody, they have to have that kind of experience. And I mean, I guess in their defense, they won't get any experience unless they get it from somewhere. So there's that. But he did show that he did not have the moxie to be a NFL head coach. So it just goes back to your point where there's some people that are just born to be head coaches they have the moxie to become head coaches, and then there are some that should just be assistants.
Right. There's some people who are meant to be the captain of the ship. There's some people who are meant to be on the ship. So when it comes to the NFL, that was our conversation here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. Talking about the NFL here with Renegade from No Filter Productions. Now we are going to transition over to the NBA. We had the 2022 NBA Finals. That was a really good game that happened most recently. You have the Boston Celtics. You have the Golden State Warriors. And since it's still early on, and considering we're going to talk about it more in detail, later on this week, when it comes to the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I got to ask you, Renegade, what team do you have winning this series? And if you had to give a prediction, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh, man. Well, I don't know who's going to win this series. I'm going to say that. I think this is game 2 coming up is going to be a pivotal game. I think Boston is going to come out, as strong as they did. Al Horford's proven that he's still got it. Especially going toe-to-toe with Draymond Green. But I think this time Draymond Green is going to be ready. And so will the rest of the Golden State Warriors. Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, they're going to have to step up if Golden State wants to have a chance. I mean, this one is all hands on deck. Boston is way too talented, especially in their front court and in all aspects of the game, for them to not show up, which is what we seen last game. These guys did not show up. They have to show up.
And the one thing I did like about game 1 and the thing that we saw in this series, we even saw in the Eastern Conference Finals as well against Miami, is Boston is resilient. Boston is a team that, if they're down by a couple, they don't just give up. No, they will come back. They'll keep on fighting. So when it comes to the Boston Celtics, I like the resiliency of the organization. More importantly, the way that I watch the NBA, obviously it's a shooting league. However, you're noticing with Boston is that they don't just take any shots willy-nilly. They actually plan out their shots. They will actually figure out where they need to be, and then they execute the shot.
Right.
So I kind of like, how they have the control. How they like to have the what's it called? The discipline of shooting. So I definitely like that when it comes to the Boston Celtics. Now, I've said this on social media. I said this on another show that I did an appearance on, but I'll say it here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I have the Boston Celtics beating the Golden State Warriors in 6 games. I believe that's going to be a 6-game series. Boston Celtics will win. They'll pick up, title number 18. And when it comes to Boston, I think they'll really, cement their legacy as the greatest franchise in NBA history, with them having the most titles in NBA history.
I have 18.
Yep, that will be 18. So when it comes to the Boston Celtics, I like what they're doing against Golden State. I got them winning in 6, and I really like the depth that the Boston Celtics showed in Game 1. You have shooters down low, but you also got big men up high who, will be able to actually make opportunities happen in the paint. So I will say Boston in 6. But, do you think it is a possibility that Golden State, they lost Game 1. It was unfortunate. But will it be anybody except their shooters that are going to make an impact, or is there going to be anybody that's going to be down low who will actually make an impact for Golden State?
Well, Draymond Green and company have to show up also. And they have to show up before Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins can. This is, like I said just a minute ago, this is an all hands on deck situation. Boston is too talented of a team not to have that. And the young guys from Golden State really got to step up. And I mean, they've been doing it all playoffs. Kudos to them. And
Louis,
Jordan Poole,
Kaminga, all those guys.
Right. And Jordan Poole, for the record, came from, the University of Michigan. So we know what talent should look like. This is kind of what it is. So I just had to throw that out there.
There you go. I mean, I will say that, it would be, bringing you on, it would be expected to bring up a little bit of Michigan when it comes to basketball. Now, I will say, talking about the NBA Finals. Now, one last question about the NBA Finals in general is we've had a lot of blowouts in the 2021 NBA playoffs. There's been a lot of back and forth, about there's been 14-point, 20-point, 25-point blowouts in this playoff. Do you think that that's going to continue with the NBA Finals, or do you think there are going to be closer games now with it being the finals?
I think we got 2 evenly matched teams. So, like I said, I'm pretty sure that this is Game 2. Golden State's going to really make a game for this, if not win Game 2. I can't, that blowout, I think that was just kind of a fluke.
Well, for the people out there in Las Vegas, the sportsbook capital of the world, they're obviously hoping that there isn't more blowouts in the NBA Finals. Having a competitive series is what would be best for the sportsbooks and definitely best for the people in their pocketbooks. Mm-hmm. Now, talking about the NBA here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here at the Renegade from No Filter Productions. And the big storyline that came out of the NBA was the $2 billion offer from Nike's Phil Knight. He also is a co-owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, but most people know him from Nike. He's going to be trying to buy the Portland Trail Blazers from Jody Allen, the wife of, the late Paul Allen, who owns the Seahawks and the Trail Blazers. So now I have to ask you, Renegade, and all the people watching around the world, do you think that with Phil Knight being someone who's attached to Oregon, he's obviously a huge alum of University of Oregon. He pours in a lot of money as an alum to University of Oregon. Do you think that, A, this is going to keep the team in Portland, and B, do you think that this will actually make Portland competitive in the NBA now that they're going to have somebody with a lot of money walking around buying the team?
It might make a difference, especially, with Damian Lillard still not having anybody, beside him. We've actually came up with some scenarios on changing the game about where we can see Damian Lillard. Personally, I want to see Damian Lillard with Giannis.
I know we've talked about that.
Yeah, I really want to see Damian Lillard with Giannis, and how much of a difference I believe Damian Lillard can make on that Milwaukee squad, who's already good, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but for some reason, I got a feeling if Damian Lillard was going to go anywhere, he'd go to LA. He would go back home. I have a feeling that would be the destination for Damian Lillard.
Well, now back home, the Clippers or the Lakers, because the Clippers, I believe Kawhi Leonard's still there. So,
well, Kawhi Leonard's still there, but here's the problem: is that they're trying to move Paul George. In fact, there's been a lot of reports that they're trying to move Paul George this offseason.
Everybody's trying to move Paul George. So, he's not as relevant as what he was, but 3
I mean,
or
my
4 years.
great grandmother right now is trying to move him in fantasy basketball. So
Right. I mean, he's not. It's Paul George. Okay.
well, the whole thing about the Los Angeles Clippers is that it was supposed to be a two-man show. It was supposed to be Kawhi Leonard. It was supposed to be Paul George.
Right.
But with Paul George being expendable, I really do think that with his salary and with how much money he's making, I could see the LA Clippers being a team that could get Damian Lillard. The Los Angeles Lakers, they obviously want to add another star. And with Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis and the contracts that they have, that could be leverage the Lakers could use in a sign and trade kind of thing.
Right.
But the way I look at it with Damian Lillard, I just don't see any other market outside of California being where he goes. I know somebody mentioned the Utah Jazz because he went to Weber State. Weber State is in Utah.
Yeah.
It's up there in
It is.
it's up there in I think Ogden, if I remember correctly. But when it comes to the Utah Jazz, I told people, I said, unless you're going to move Rudy Gobert, you really don't have any amount of money to move him. Because I think
and Rudy Gobert. I think we said this during that we were on
changing the
we
game.
were on my show, Changing the Game. Excuse me. And we said that. Well, where that would have been a possible scenario as well for them. So I still feel like it'll be likely, and I'm quite sure you do too. So there's that.
And with the Portland Trailblazers, with Phil Knight, the news that he's trying to buy a team for $2 billion. I really do believe that he's going to try to keep the team in Portland. Because last week, I brought on Damian Adams from the Real Deal with Damian Adams. And I mentioned that if it wasn't someone who's loyal to Oregon that buys the team, they could easily just move it out of Portland. And I really felt like that was the worst case scenario for the NBA. Because if you bring in an outsider, if you bring in someone who doesn't have that loyalty, doesn't have that passion to Oregon, and they have no reason to keep them at the Moda Center, they have no motivation to keep them in Portland, and they would go explore to a more bigger market. But with Phil Knight being the guy now who's supposed to be buying the team, I think they're going to stay in Portland. They're going to build around Damian Lillard or get a big trade package that will at least justify them moving Damian Lillard.
Right.
But when it comes to Portland, I'm interested to see what happens next. And you know what? It's good that Phil Knight is doing what he does. There's also been a report that came out in the NFL. I don't know if you heard about this, Renegade, but Jody Allen isn't done when it comes to selling teams. There's also been a report that she might be interested in selling the Seattle Seahawks now once the Portland Trailblazers sale is officially finalized.
Okay, so I'm going to it's two parts to this. Okay, so does that mean that Pete Carroll is near the end of his tenure in Seattle?
I would say yes.
If that's the case, because I've had little inklings that it might have been out of the Seattle camp. All right, so with that being said, now as far as the NBA is concerned, and with her getting ready to sell a team, a Seattle team. So the NBA is talking about expansion. Seattle and Las Vegas.
That has definitely been the conversation. Yeah, you have Seattle, you have Las Vegas. Of course, there's more franchises or more cities that could be involved.
Right. Now, Vancouver, we've tried that before. We've went down that rabbit hole. And now they're the Memphis Grizzlies. So let's not try that again, please. San Diego, I think, would be a decent destination.
It is the big
right, and they also still have what can you put a roof over Qualcomm Stadium?
Unfortunately, no, but I know with San Diego, they definitely would be able to get the funding to build a new arena if they had to.
Well, yeah, there is that. So, Seattle and Las Vegas. I mean, personally, I think the NBA owes it to Seattle to
absolutely
to award them a franchise, so that way we can see the Seattle Supersonics back in the NBA, where it should have been in the first place, and it should have never left.
Now, when it comes to Seattle, I do agree that, I told people for a long time I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves were going to move to Seattle, but obviously with them adding all this money into Minnesota now, it's very unlikely that they will be moved to Seattle. However, I think we both agree, Renegade, that I felt like it was not just a certainty, but it was pretty much when Seattle was going to get an NBA team. Didn't matter if it was relocation or expansion.
Right. Yeah.
Seattle
I mean,
was trying to do an NBA team.
we said that. We said that Seattle might be getting the next NBA franchise. It's been a couple of times. I mean, we've hinted on it. Maybe they listen to us. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
That'd be cool, but they should. Because I think that that Oklahoma City Thunder that was totally uncalled for.
Yeah, the whole debacle. Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't have never happened. And I think the people of Seattle deserve a little better than what they got from the NBA on that. So the NBA would only be doing right by granting them a franchise, personally.
And with Las Vegas, obviously, the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, we are broadcasted in Las Vegas, Nevada, the sports entertainment capital of the world. And when it comes to Las Vegas, obviously, as a sports fan, I would love to have an NBA team in my backyard. I wouldn't have to have Lakers Nation shoved down my throat 95% of the time on radio airwaves here in Las Vegas. You have your own NBA team that would be occupying the airwaves. However, I guess the one question you have to ask yourself is, I live in Las Vegas, so I know where the arenas and everything would be built. And I just don't know if Las Vegas, because of how much they've expanded and how aggressively they've expanded, that I just don't know where they would put it. Because they built T-Mobile Arena recently. They did that about 5 years ago. They built Allegiant Stadium. They built the brand new ballpark. They're trying to build a brand new ballpark once again for the Las Vegas Athletics when they come here to Las Vegas. So I'm just going to say that when it comes
to the Oakland A's are going to, that's right.
Yeah, the Oakland Athletics, they're going to be coming to Las Vegas. It's pretty much been finalized at this point. So when it comes to Las Vegas, my problem isn't that they can't do it. I just don't know where Las Vegas is going to do it. Are they going to share T-Mobile Arena with the Vegas Golden Knights for a while? Are they going to share a certain arena with the Las Vegas Aces? What's the situation going to be with the NBA? Because I think they're worth an expansion franchise. I just don't know where they would put them.
Well, personally, I don't think that there's any other places that there wouldn't be any better place than Las Vegas. I mean, they might as well, because I mean, let's face it, the Black Knights are doing pretty good in Las Vegas, and the Raiders have gotten a better reception, I would say, from just the fans around the league about the Raiders being such a historic team, even moving there, and I think that's pretty cool. So, and besides, it'll get more people to, go and play the slots and, drop the house payments and the car notes and everything else on, some money, hey.
Absolutely. We're talking about NBA expansion here on Sports Angle, the voice of new media here on PRConnectionsRadio.com. And there was somebody who actually sent me a list of teams, and I actually had to bookmark this because obviously on Twitter you can't really show it on here. But somebody said because of how great the Toronto Raptors have been with the NBA, wouldn't it make sense for the NBA to add a second Canadian team, aka Vancouver or Montreal?
Those have been, there again, I think we need to leave that out. This isn't hockey where half the teams in the NHL are Canadian. This means that we'll only have two teams. Now, Toronto was a good market for it, but I'm not so sure if Montreal, which, by the way, is in the province of Quebec, and really they're French. So, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe there, but Vancouver, no, let's not do that again, please. That was a train wreck waiting to happen.
And I'm obviously reading all your Twitter comments, trying to make sure that everybody is involved. If you want to join the conversation, go to @SportsAngle on PR. Once again, that is @SportsAngle on PR on Twitter. Someone said, what about Buffalo? With them having the Sabres, them having the Bills, it'd be a great time to add another team in Buffalo.
Okay, so you want an NBA team in Buffalo?
Apparently, this person does. Yes.
All right. I'm gonna let that go. All right.
And one last person, they did say this, is that in their perfect world, they would want to be San Diego and Seattle. So that way you could have 2 new teams added to the West Coast, and they could balance out the divisions.
That's fair. That's fair. Why not? I think San Diego would be a good market for. It would be a better market than the Canadian ones for the NBA. I know that. So yeah, sure. Why not?
And then, going over to the Facebook chat, thanks to everybody who's watching around the world. NBA has purchased property at Windmill and Las Vegas Boulevard to put a stadium there. Now, that is a great update. My rebuttal is it how much of that is going to have to be private funding and how much of that can be public funding? Because here in Las Vegas, they have all these room taxes. There's all these things that have already been put into motion thanks to the Allegiant Stadium and everything. So that's really would be the one question I have when it comes to Las Vegas. You purchase all this land and all that property, but at the same time, you got to be able to build off of that land. You got to be able to build off that property. So that's just really my one question about it. Now, before I get into the hockey side of it, before I get into the second hour and we talk about, the NHL with myself here on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media, I want to ask you, Renegade, because we got about 15 minutes left. The MLB season, we were talking about this off air, and I figured it might be a great time to talk about it now. MLB, Detroit Tigers, you're a Detroit Tigers fan. I was very high on them at the beginning of the season. And I will say that the Detroit Tigers, give it time. I think they're going to be okay, and they should be okay. And they should be good.
Well, they'll be good. But the problem is that will they be playoff good? That's the only question. I think that's left up to them at this point because they've strung together some wins. And can we keep doing that? Is this team actually starting to find their footing? They've won their last 3?
They have.
Yeah, they won the last 3. So have they started finding their footing? Has everything started to actually come together with the young talent, be able to fill holes with injuries that have occurred? And are we continuing to bring up players from the farm systems to come up? Because we've got some pretty good ones.
Well, speaking of one, you had Cody Clemens. Cody Clemens, the son of Roger Clemens, he made his MLB debut a while ago. And Roger Clemens being in the stands saying this is one of the proudest moments of his career. I thought that was a cool moment. Yeah,
I did too. And it was good for baseball, and seeing how, the torch just keeps getting passed on. That was really good for that. And so, and that's the thing, now they're starting to make that actual, the AL Central, they're starting to actually make a run at it.
I mean, you got the Chicago White Sox. They've lost 4 in a row. Kansas City, I think, lost 5 in a row. Cleveland, I mean, they're kind of building momentum, but not really. So I will say with Minnesota, unless they have an epic collapse, I actually think Minnesota might win the division unless they, go off a freaking cliff. But having second place in the AL Central, I don't think that's actually a big feat for the Detroit Tigers. I actually think they could finish second.
Right. Well, no, it isn't, but they're again, the pitching's starting to come around too. And they're actually starting to allow a lot less runs in these past 3 games than what they have in the past, almost 40.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, we got 120 games left in the regular season before it's all said and done. So I think, the people have wrote them off a little too quick. Yeah, it's a disappointing start to the season. It's not what we expected, but we've got AJ Hinch, who's a really good manager.
One of
And
the
he's
best.
he's sticking to what he's doing by doing unconventional things and having an unconventional game plan and making some really gutsy calls. And they're starting to really pay off for him.
And continuing with the MLB conversation, we got about 10 minutes left in the first hour here with Renegade from No Filter Productions. The New York Yankees right now have the best record in baseball. Some people are happy about that. Some people want to throw their computer at me. When it comes to New York Yankees, it's really a love-hate relationship. But I have to ask you, from a baseball perspective, do you think that it's true that when it comes to baseball, whenever the Yankees are one of the best teams in MLB, it's great for marketing, great for ratings, great for money-wise? When it comes to Major League Baseball, having their most popular franchise being one of the top teams in MLB, that financially it's great for MLB?
Sure, it's worked for the Boston Celtics. I mean, there's that, so it's working for the Boston Celtics. So I think it'll work for the Yankees. You have a lot of diehard Yankees fans, from the age 2 of 90 till 97. They're diehard Yankees fans. We've got them all across the country. They're around like roaches. So let me tell you, and it's good for baseball because historically, the Yankees have been one of the best teams in Major League Baseball history. So, it's good to see them back on top. Let's see what they can do from here.
And I want to give a shout out real quick to all my Canadians who watch the show. I found out very recently, Renegade, that we actually have a big audience in Canada. So shout out to all my Canadians. And when it comes to Toronto Blue Jays, they are the only team as of right now that are in Canada in Major League Baseball. They have one of the best records in MLB right now. They've gone 8 of their last 10, so solid for Toronto. And I will give a lot of credit to their best player, Vlad Guerrero Jr. And I'm not going to try to sound biased here, but man, he is one of my favorite players to watch in MLB. I mean, his swing, he's a lot like his dad. Yep. I know he probably gets that a lot, but man, his dad, he had this great swing, and he has almost the exact same thing.
And his dad was also a Blue Jay.
Yeah.
So there you go. And that's where he established himself as one of the best Major League Baseball players in franchise history.
Right. They both were established in Canada. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So, like father, like son, that's good for him. Because a lot of times when we look at these superstars, we think that their kids are good. No. Barry Sanders Jr., he was bad. Let's see, Michael Jeffrey Jordan Jr., he was horrible. In fact, because he went to the University of Houston, I believe, and he just crapped out. He wasn't like that at all.
Well, I will say this: if you believe the conspiracy theory on who Michael Jordan's abandoned son is, he's one of the best players in the NBA. But let's not talk about that.
His abandoned son, eh?
Yeah, there's a conspiracy theory that Jimmy Butler is actually Michael Jordan's abandoned son.
Yeah, well, he's sure playing like it though. He was, and that's one thing too about Jimmy Butler is that I think he's just quietly good.
Yeah, he is.
And nobody pays attention to the numbers. But then all of a sudden, you're in the Eastern Conference Finals. And they're like, oh, whoa, wait, where is he? Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally upset about the Joker getting the MVP yet again. But I think we jumped the gun when it comes to it. They vote a little too early when they talk about the MVP voting.
Well, the one thing a lot of people got to remember is that people think that it's voted on 2 weeks after the NBA playoffs have started. That's not true.
No.
It's been debunked multiple times. They actually vote the week of the NBA regular season ending. That's when they calculate all the votes. They put them all in. Now, obviously, Renegade, I've talked about it on your show, Changing the Game. that I actually think having the media vote for it is absolute BS.
Yep.
I think having actual players who've actually played the
Right.
game.
It should be compiled of a committee, and they should pick committee members every year. A certain percentage from players, certain percentage from old coaches, certain percentage from just the recognized media personnel.
Right. And
like the Michael Wilbons or what's that? Stephen A. Smith. Him, all of these sports writers and everything. It should be a compilation of all of those that would be then it would be fair.
Right. I mean, to me, it's kind of similar to, I don't know if you saw this, but during the NBA All-Star weekend, they had the players vote on who they would have had in the All-Star game, and their stuff was completely different than what the fans and what the media voted for.
Well, sure.
So the way I look at it, when players actually play the game, when they've actually suited up their sneakers and everything, they know the game. They actually know it. So I've always been on that side of the fence. I think if you actually have players voting for it on that committee, that you would actually see different players win MVP, win, Rookie of the Year, be on the All-NBA, stuff like that. Because to me, I feel like the media has a lot of bias towards certain people. And that's the reason why certain players don't get it or certain players do get it. But with us having about 4 minutes left here in the first hour, I have to ask, when it comes to MLB, there was one last conversation, and that was the Anaheim Angels. They've lost 9 straight games. They're starting to fall back down to earth. And a lot of people were surprised about the first 40 games. They had one of the best records in baseball. Now they're falling back down to earth. Do you think that the Anaheim Angels, the problem is that you just can't have 2 great players on the team? You have to have 26 players, not just 2?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I lost you.
I think with the Anaheim Angels, the biggest problem is that they have 2 great players, not 26 players on that team.
Right. Yeah, they right. And that's the one thing about it. You don't want to have too many great players on one team, because then you don't have a whole team. It kind of messes up the identity. It's kind of what we've seen with the Los Angeles Lakers this season. How too many too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. A team is guys who come in and who accept their role. And the guys when you talk about superstars, they're so good, but they're collabing together, so nobody really has a role. When you have the people who have these roles, they accept these roles, and not only because they accept these roles, they also excel at them. And that's what makes a good team. Take a look at it's another Detroit team, the 2004 Pistons, and how they had really good players, but they didn't have a superstar player on that team. Yet they were able to affect the game, especially defensively. Probably, statistically speaking, one of the best defensive teams in NBA history. But they had a team. They had these good players who accepted their roles on this team, and because they accepted their roles, they were able to excel. And that's what the Angels don't have right now.
I totally agree with you when it comes to Anaheim Angels. They just have not enough talent around Ohtani and Trout. They're great players, but they can't save the organization.
They're great players, but the rest of the team are basically bodies.
That's pretty much all it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Now we have about 45 seconds left in hour 1 here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. Now, Renegade, it's always great bringing you on the show.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So, how about you plug your content, tell everybody where they can find you, any projects you're working on.
All right. So, I got a show. Actually, we have a show tomorrow, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, be 5:00 Vegas. It will be Changing the Game. Is episode 25. Myself and the Mr. Sports Angle. That's what I love to call him, Mr. Sports Angle, Mr. Rocco Kelly. He joins me on the show, and we talk sports and more. Same thing we do here. We'll probably cover some more topics tomorrow, just some different ones, just because of our conversation today. But I'm sure it'll lead back into some segments of the show. So you can check us out right there on, if you look up No Filter Productions LLC. We are a media production company. We do a couple of podcasts. You can check us out on our Facebook page. Go to www.nofilterproductionsllc.com. Check out our website, or you can Google my name, Arenthous Frazier, and you will find about 2 or 3 pages of content where you can find me. I do high school football for 95.1 WVXG. We'll be doing it again this year. Glad to be doing that. Hey, it's a kick-ass ride so far, and that's where you can find me.
Well, it's always great bringing you on the show, and we'll definitely try to bring you on once again. So,
all right,
it's always good having you on, my friend.
All right, hey, have a good one, guys.
Now, getting into the NHL here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. Now, yes, you had the New York Rangers. They did win 3-2 over Tampa Bay. Gerard Gallant showed Tampa Bay what New York is made of. And I will give credit to New York Rangers. They've shown a lot of grit. They've had a lot of tenacity in this series. I like the fact that they've been able to pass the puck, been able to put a lot of great opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net. However, I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. Let me explain to you why I'm not. The reason why I'm not going to hit the panic button on the Tampa Bay Lightning is because they've been here before. Tampa Bay Lightning have been in a situation where they have had to overcome hurdles. Tampa Bay Lightning have had to overcome teams that have had a bigger stride than them. Understand that when it comes to Tampa Bay, they're back-to-back Stanley Cup champions for a reason. Understand the Tampa Bay Lightning, they have won back-to-back Stanley Cups because of the fact that they've had to overcome adversity in the past. When it comes to Tampa Bay, having a 2-0 series, they're coming back home to the Mlb Arena in Tampa Bay. I've said this on the show once. I'll say it on the show once again. Home ice advantage is crucial in the NHL. Having the home ice advantage is one of the most valuable pieces of the NHL. Understand, Tampa Bay going back home, having the Lightning Bolt, having the Bolt fan base behind them is going to be critical heading into Game 3. So when you got Sunday, when you have the organization of Tampa Bay heading back home, you are going to see a more intensified organization. You're going to see a lightning rod, minus the pun there. You're going to see a lightning rod of the Tampa Bay Lightning when they get back home. Now, Igor Shesterkin, Andrei Vasilevsky, it has been a goaltenders matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals. Unlike the Western Conference, which has been a lot of back and forth goal scoring, the Tampa Bay Lightning New York Rangers game, you have seen 2 of the best goalies in hockey go at it. You have seen one of the best playoff goalies of the modern era in Andrei Vasilevsky. You have seen the best goalie of the 2021-2022 NHL season in Igor Shesterkin. Honestly, this was a matchup that most hockey fans were wanting and anticipating this playoff round because you were going to see the best of the best go up against each other. You also got to remember, folks, the New York Rangers, they are one of the biggest markets in the NHL. They are one of the most valuable franchises in the NHL. They are one of the biggest box office attractions in the NHL. When it comes to the New York Rangers, them making the Stanley Cup Finals, It would be great for hockey. It would be great for New York City. It'd be great for Manhattan. More importantly, it'd be great for the Vegas Golden Knights. It would be great for Golden Knights fans to root for Gerard Gallant. It would be great for Vegas Golden Knights fans to see Ryan Reeves knock out somebody else in the Stanley Cup Finals. It would be great to see the New York Rangers at one of the most iconic venues in sports be in a Stanley Cup Final. Do not be surprised, folks, here in Las Vegas, the sports entertainment capital of the world, if Vegas Golden Knights fans aren't rooting for New York. Do not be surprised, despite the fact that Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is in Tampa Bay. Despite the fact that Maxime Lagacé is in Tampa Bay. When it comes to New York Rangers, when it comes to Gerard Gallant, when it comes to Ryan Reeves, Vegas Golden Knights fans are supporting and they are rooting for the New York Rangers. Because deep down, the Vegas Golden Knights fans, they envision the New York Rangers as the Vegas Golden Knights. They look at what Gerard Gallant has done, and they see that as what they should be. Vegas Golden Knights fans want to see Ryan Reeves beating up on opponents, but wearing the gold and wearing the silver. Understand that when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, regardless if fans want to admit it or not, they're rooting for New York. They want to see New York succeed. Because Vegas Golden Knights fans are still supportive of Gerard Gallant. Vegas Golden Knights fans are still in love with Ryan Reeves. So here's my statement for all the people watching around the world, and especially in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Do not be shocked if Vegas Golden Knights fans hop onto the coattails of the New York Rangers. Do not be surprised if Vegas Golden Knights fans are putting their chips all in on New York. Because they like Gerard Gallant, they respect Gerard Gallant, and they want to see him get to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's very similar to the Western Conference Finals. Understand that when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers and Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, they don't want to see Colorado win it. Understand the Vegas Golden Knights do not want to see the Colorado Avalanche win this series because of the fact that the Colorado Avalanche has been the team that the Vegas Golden Knights have had to go up against time and time again. Understand that the Colorado Avalanche have more of a rivalry with the Vegas Golden Knights as opposed to the Edmonton Oilers. Understand that, yes, the Edmonton Oilers have Evander Kane, who always is going to have a sour taste in Vegas Golden Knights fans' mouths. But Colorado has a deeper impact. Colorado has been the team that has punched Vegas in the mouth time and time and time again. So if you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan, let me tell you who you want. If you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan, you want to see the New York Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers. If you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan, no doubt about it, you want to see the Edmonton Oilers take on the New York Rangers because of the fact that you're going to have Gerard Gallant, you're going to have Ryan Reeves taking on the Edmonton Oilers, who is an organization that is a less of a thorn in the Vegas Golden Knights side as opposed to Colorado was. So here in Las Vegas, that's what the fans want. That's what the people in Vegas want. But what does your host, Ian Rickelli, want? What does the sports angle on PR Connections Radio want? Well, I do agree that Edmonton would be best for the NHL. Having a NHL team from Canada in the Stanley Cup Final would be best for business. Having a team in Canada, which, by the way, occupies 70% of the NHL players, would be best for business. Understand that having Edmonton, having the best hockey player in the world, would be a ratings gold mine for the NHL. On the Tampa Bay side, there's a reason why Tampa Bay is great for hockey. Because for the first time in a long time, really for the first time since maybe the late 60s, early 70s, you have had a dynasty in the NHL. If Tampa Bay goes back to back to back, or if they lose in the finals and they go 2 out of 3, it will be the first time since the early 90s that we have seen such a dominant team in hockey. Understand that when it comes to Tampa Bay, the reason why they would be so good for the NHL is because we have not seen this type of dominance. We have not seen an organization absolutely consume the NHL like Tampa Bay Lightning have done. Understand, Tampa Bay has been able to take something that has not happened in decades. So Tampa Bay versus Edmonton, that would be solid. But let's not count out the other scenario. Let's not count out that having the New York Rangers, having the biggest market in the NHL, would be great for ratings. Let's not count the fact that New York Rangers, Madison Square Garden, would be a gold mine for the sports books. It would be great for the marketing. It'd be great for the money. Colorado Avalanche, even though they're not the biggest market in the world, there is talent there. Even though the Colorado Avalanche, they do not have the glitz and glamour that New York does. Even though Colorado does not have the rings and does not have the championship prestige that Edmonton does. Even though Colorado does not have the recent success that Tampa Bay does. What Colorado has is opportunity. What Colorado has is something that all 3 of the other franchises do not have. And that is an opportunity to change up the system. The Colorado Avalanche have an opportunity to go into the Stanley Cup Finals, win a championship in a mid-level market, which really hasn't been done in a while. So, regardless if you are New York versus Colorado, if you're Edmonton versus Tampa Bay, if you're Tampa Bay versus Colorado, if you are New York versus Edmonton, regardless of what matchup you desire, let me point out something. The NHL Stanley Cup Final, regardless of who goes up against who, is going to be printing money for the NHL. It is going to be printing a lot of money for the organization that the NHL is going to be doing. Understand that regardless of who hoists that Stanley Cup, the NHL wins at the end. The NHL ends up being the moneymaker from all of this. So I look at it and I compare it to the NFL. I compare the NHL as a win-win, similar to Super Bowl in the NFL. When the NFL has their annual Super Bowl, it doesn't matter what both teams are in it. All that matters is that when it comes to the NHL, whoever team is in it, they will be the best for business. Now, moving over to the trophy side of the NHL, it has been announced that the NHL, there's going to be the award ceremony. There's going to be trophies that are going to be handed out with the NHL. And I'm going to be announcing some of the awards that are going to be handed out for the NHL. Now, we already know the Florida Panthers. They won the regular season best award trophy, the President's Trophy, a curse at this point, which is the President's Trophy. But there has been the nominees that have come out for the Hart Memorial Trophy, and it's actually quite fascinating to see the Hart Trophy because you got to understand that when it comes to the Hart Memorial Trophy and the odds with them, you got Austin Matthews, you got Connor McDavid, and you got Igor Shesterkin. Understand that when it comes to those three guys, there is a lot of opportunity for each of them to win that trophy. Connor McDavid, he led the NHL in goals. He was one of the best goal scorers in all of hockey in 2021, 2022. And understand that Igor Shesterkin has been the best goaltender in the NHL. Understand that when it comes to Igor Shesterkin, the bright lights, big city, he has been hands down one of the best in the NHL. Now, Connor McDavid has been the best hockey player in the NHL for really the last 4 or 5 years. Understand that having Connor McDavid, there has been a lot of conversation about considering the fact that he leads the league in points, considering the fact that he has been one of the best hockey players in all of hockey. It could be a no-brainer that he ends up winning the trophy for the Hart Memorial. Understand that when it comes to Connor McDavid, when it comes to his popularity as the most profile and the most popular NHL player, I do say that I will not be surprised if the Hart Memorial Trophy goes to Connor McDavid, and I will not be shocked if for the third year in a row, Connor McDavid ends up winning that trophy out there in Edmonton. So I want to ask all of you watching around the world, who do you have as the Hart Memorial Trophy winner, as the MVP of the NHL? Do you have Connor McDavid, the guy who leads the NHL in points? Do you have Austin Matthews from the Toronto Maple Leafs, the guy with the most goals? Or do you have the best goalie in all of hockey in Igor Shesterkin? I mean, I really want to know from all of you, who do you have as the guy when it comes to the NHL MVP? I mean, it's really similar to the NFL MVP, where you had Aaron Rodgers, you had all of these guys that were competing for the NFL MVP. At the end of the day, it ended up going to Aaron Rodgers, but there was a lot of conversation that had to be had when it came to the NHL MVP. I also want to point out that Johnny Gaudreau, Jonathan Huberdeau, I really thought they should have had at least some consideration. They had phenomenal seasons. I really was disappointed that they didn't get at least a nominee for the Hart Memorial Trophy. Now, the Calder Memorial Trophy, which was the rookie, I honestly got to say that when it comes to the rookie conversation, I really thought that Moritz Seider from the Detroit Red Wings, he should be the guy that really should win that award when it comes to the Calder Memorial Trophy. And really, the last conversation we're going to have about the trophies was the Vesna Trophy, which goes to the best goalie in all of hockey. Now, I understand there's going to be people out there who really think this is a foregone conclusion. I know there's people out there who say that this is a no-brainer that Igor Shesterkin is going to win the Vesna. You also have Jose Soros from the Nashville Predators, Jacob Markstrom from the Calgary Flames. And I'm going to say it, both of those guys had excellent seasons, but Igor Shesterkin for the New York Rangers, he is going to be my pick to win the Vesna Trophy in the NHL. So we have about 15 minutes left here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. And staying with the Vegas Golden Knights, there has been a report who has come out about players who are likely to get traded from every NHL team. Now, I'm not going to go for the rest of the league because that's not what's going to matter. The Vegas Golden Knights on that list had one player. The Vegas Golden Knights had one player on that list that was most likely to get traded. And that player was Max Pacioretty. This article that came out by Bleacher Report has said that Max Pacioretty and his $7 million cap hit is most likely going to be dealt this offseason. Now, they've listed off a few reasons, but I have two. I have two main reasons as to why Max Pacioretty will be traded, and I have one reason as to why he won't be traded this offseason. Now, the first reason on why he will get traded is to shed cap space. Now, we've talked about this on the show. I've mentioned this in the past, and I'll mention it again. The Vegas Golden Knights are in cap hell. Understand the Vegas Golden Knights, they are in a position where they do not have flexibility when it comes to cap space. Understand the Vegas Golden Knights are currently $1.1 million over the cap. So because of that, and because of the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have all of this money that they're going to have to try to use, Max Pacioretty being on a one-year deal worth $7 million, that is going to be huge for the Vegas Golden Knights. Having them getting rid of that $7 million would be able to get them down below the cap. That would be able to get them down to a certain number that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to need long term. So, understanding that situation, I look at it and I say, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, the first reason on why you trade Max Pacioretty is to get under the cap, to save cap space, and to get that $7 million off the books with Max Pacioretty being gone. The second reason why you would trade Max Pacioretty is because he does not have a no-trade clause. Understand that Max Pacioretty can be moved. He can't be dealt. Unlike Mark Stone, unlike Jack Eichel, unlike Alex Pietrangelo, he does not have a no-movement clause, which means that the Vegas Golden Knights have the ability, if they choose to end up putting them as a organization that you could move him if you need to. So, understand the Vegas Golden Knights, I believe that it would be in their favor to trade Max Pacioretty. Now, the one negative, the one downside, the one con to trading Max Pacioretty would be your lack of depth at the wing. If you move Max Pacioretty, you're moving Jonathan Marchessault up to the first line, which on paper does not sound that bad. Understand that on paper, that does not sound like a terrible thing to have Jonathan Marchessault be on the first line. But you would have on your second line Evgeny Dadonov, William Karlsson, and Chandler Stevenson. Understand that you would maybe have William Carrier move up to the top six as your second best winger in the organization. Because you got to understand that Riley Smith is most likely not coming back. You got to understand that your Matthias Janmark is most likely not coming back. So because of the fact that your wing depth has already gotten weakened because of the fact that certain players are not coming back, you have to ask yourself the logical question. If you move on from Max Pacioretty, can you fill that bottom six role with players who are on the same level as who you have now? If you move Max Pacioretty, you're going to have Jonathan Marchessault on the first line. You know what? I'm not going to disagree with that. When it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, having a guy like William Carrier or maybe having somebody like him, like a Evgeny Dadonov, be on your second line, that's going to add a lot of question marks about your depth out there in Las Vegas when it comes to your wings. So that would be the one con of trading Max Pacioretty. Now, my opinion and my angle when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights is, I've said this on this show, and I'll say this once again, I think it'll be Pacioretty, Karlsson, or the Dadonov. I think one of those three is going to be traded. I think that one of these guys is going to be dealt, because you got to understand that when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, they have to move from certain players. They have to move on from a certain perspective. And when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, as cruel and as tough as this sounds, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, they're going to make a few moves. They're going to move on from one or two players, but I don't see them completely rebuilding. I do not see them completely retooling. I see them making a few tweaks, but that's about it. So when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, regardless if they trade Max Pacioretty off of the first line, regardless if they trade possibly somebody like William Karlsson off the second line, they move on from Nolan Patrick on the third line, regardless of what they do, I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to move on from one person, and then they will keep the rest of the organization remotely around the same. Because the way I've been watching this organization, the way I've been watching this team, I just simply do not see how this organization is going to exist long term with all of these guys, pretty much being paid all this money. I just don't see how the Vegas Golden Knights are going to keep the entire team intact unless they move on from one or two contracts this offseason. Now, somebody did ask me, who do I think is the most likely scenario for the chopping block with the Vegas Golden Knights? Who are the players that I could see them moving on from with this organization? Now, I've already said Riley Smith. I think that Riley Smith is somebody that they're going to move on from. He's somebody that I could see realistically being not part of the organization long term. I see a situation where, William Karlsson, I think he's a guy that they're going to move on from. Max Pacioretty, once again, we could have been talking about him for the last 5 minutes. He is a durable situation. He's a doable guy. But if I really had to break it down and I really had to talk about it from an analytical perspective, no bias, no opinion, just from analytics alone, I'm going to say that there are two players. All right. No, three. There are three players that I would put on the top of the list. All right. I'm going to put Alec Martinez at 1. Alec Martinez has been a solid defenseman, but 34 years old, $5.25 million cap hit. He has 2 years left on his contract. If the Vegas Golden Knights have to dump salary, if they have to let go of a big-time contract that doesn't have all the restrictions on it, I think Alec Martinez would be option number 1. I'm going to say that having a guy like William Karlsson with his $5.9 million cap hit, he would be second on that list because of the fact that his production's gone down. He hasn't scored as many goals as he used to. I would say he'd be second on that list, and then third would be Max Pacioretty. So in order, I say it'd probably be Martinez at 1, Karlsson at 2, and Pacioretty at 3. All right, when it comes to trading a player, I say that would be the priority list. Everybody else would kind of be lower. Guys like Dadonov, I've been watching more of him lately, and I actually went back and watched film of Dadonov. And him being a 20-goal scorer, I don't think they're going to get rid of him. Nolan Patrick has been a downer, but I don't think he's that big of a priority. Getting rid of a guy like William Carrier, once again, yes, it would be an interesting scenario, but I don't think he is on the top of the priority list when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, to repeat the priority list this offseason with the Vegas Golden Knights, I say that Alec Martinez would be priority number 1. William Karlsson would be priority 2. And Max Pacioretty would be priority 3 when it comes to trading players. When it comes to signing players, however, when it comes to keeping players with the organization, I think Nicholas Waugh should be number 1. I truly believe that keeping Nicholas Waugh would be best for business. Keeping a guy who's done a lot of good for the Vegas Golden Knights, 25 years old, 15 goals on the bottom 6, a plus 12 on the plus minus. I'd say he'd be the first person you got to keep. I'd say the second person that you really got to keep an eye on is your 2 defensemen. And your 2 defensemen you really got to keep your eye on right now with the Vegas Golden Knights is Dylan Coghlan and Nicholas Hague. Nicholas Hague, he had a plus 6. He played in 52 games. I feel like if they added him, he'd actually play 70, 80 games. he would actually be a big part of the organization. He's also 6'6", 23 years old. So with him being, a big, tall defenseman, there's going to be some upside there. And based off of the goal scoring with Dylan Coghlan, look, it's the modern NHL. They love goal scoring from defensemen. So that'd be somebody they would try to keep in that role. So that is who I would really keep an eye on with the Vegas Golden Knights. I would say honorable mention to Gage Quinney, the 26-year-old from Nevada, the guy who is a hometown boy. I would say they probably would try to keep him as well. But those are the guys that they should probably try to re-sign most likely with the Vegas Golden Knights. Nicholas Waugh, Dylan Coghlan, Nicholas Hague, Gage Quinney. Those big guys you really got to keep with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, this is the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Watch all of the content on prconnectionsradio.com. Go to our Facebook at PR Connections. Go to the website, prconnectionsradio.com. Also, watch all the content like We Have the Power, Voices of Humanity, The Defenders of Finance. There's a lot of great content on PR Connections Radio. Go watch all of their content because they put up a lot of valuable content for you to watch. You also can watch all 12 episodes of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. They're all backlogged. They're all bookmarked. So if you want to watch all 12 episodes of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, including this one, you can by going to prconnectionsradio.com. All 12 episodes are on that show. You can also watch all future episodes by clicking the like button. You can also share, subscribe. You can click all of the buttons that you want to make sure that you watch all the content on prconnectionsradio.com. You can also follow me at Ian Rickelli18, and you can follow all the show's content on social media at Sports Angle on PR. That is at Sports Angle on PR. That is our social media. We are on all platforms now, and we're going to have our YouTube channel, our TikTok account. We are on Reddit. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are on all contents you can think of. We are there on prconnectionsradio.com. And I will say until next time, thanks for having Renegade on the show. He was an excellent guest. I'll be on his show tomorrow, Changing the Game, episode 25. And that's going to be a fantastic show. So definitely go watch that. And until next time, have a great weekend. Have a great day. And keep it up in the sports world. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And have a great one.